Good evening. A serious shortage of paramedics is putting patients at risk. That's according to MPs and union leaders tonight. The South East Coast Ambulance Service, which covers Surrey, Sussex and North East Hampshire, has already been put into special measures. Managers have even been on a recruitment drive in Australia to try and fill vacancies, as Malcolm Shaw now reports.
It's a service in danger of buckling under the pressure. The demand for ambulances is steadily rising, but in our region, the South East Coast Ambulance Service is struggling to recruit enough frontline paramedics. There are currently almost 150 posts unfilled, or 1 in 6.
I know for a fact this is having a direct impact on performance, because I've had people come to see me in surgery. One person had to wait an hour for an ambulance to arrive after having a stroke.
This morning, CCAM's Board of Governors held a meeting here in Tangmere. They tell us that they do have a comprehensive strategy to recruit more paramedics, even going as far afield as Australia to find suitable candidates. Today, the National Audit Office reported that, like many ambulance services, CCAM is still failing to meet the target for responding to the most urgent 999 calls. Last September, we reported how the family of Harry Williams waited almost an hour for an ambulance, the 8-year-old later dying from meningitis.
When you're waiting in that situation, you're expecting a vehicle and emergency crew to be there at your time of need.
Even when ambulances arrive at hospital, many have to wait hours to hand over their patients because A&E departments are so busy. In the CCAM area, it's the equivalent of 10 to 20 ambulances standing idle each day.
It's massively frustrating for us because we want to get those patients that are poorly into an appropriate into a bed in A&E and seen by a doctor as soon as possible, and we're not able to do that.
CCAM remains in special measures after a controversial project which delayed the response to some calls coming via the 111 service. A new chief executive is due to take over in April. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Tangmere.
Thousands of rail passengers who use South West trains are being told to prepare for major disruption this summer during an upgrade of the network. Key commuter routes to and from Basingstoke, Winchester and Salisbury will be affected. Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce explains how disruptive it will be.
South West Trains is at its busiest times at bursting point. Passenger numbers have doubled over the last 20 years. This was Basingstoke at 7 this morning. More capacity is urgently needed.
It gets very crowded in the trains. So I think, again, it's a very good idea if they are thinking about improving the Waterloo station.
60% of the time the trains that I'm getting, you're standing.
It's getting worse, but we used to have a seat all the time, but yeah, it's getting worse.
We took a ride in the driver's cab and it's clear to see how busy it is, both on the platforms and on the tracks. The solution is a record £800 million upgrade, longer platforms for 10-carriage trains, 150 new carriages, 5 new platforms at the old Eurostar terminal, helping to ease capacity by 30%. But the work will mean 9 platform closures during most of August, with fewer trains and disruption.
For the main suburban side and for the main line, we will run about half the amount of trains which we normally run, but we will run longer trains to provide more capacity, or as much capacity as possible.
Why August? Because that's a time when obviously lots of people want to come to London for trips and things like that.
Well, the decision was made some time ago because the blockade needs to be longer than 5 to 8 days, and August typically is the quietest period from normal commuter and people working in London.
I mean, that would be quite stressful because obviously still coming into work doesn't stop for me, so less trains is never a good thing.
Personally, I'll be away on holiday, but you've got to do it sometime, haven't you? So you've got to grin and bear it for the long term.
I think that probably is the best time of the year to actually do those improvements.
Today, passengers were given virtual headsets to see how the new upgraded Waterloo will look. The advice, though, is to plan ahead.
Mike Pearce reporting there. The leader of Portsmouth City Council, Donna Jones, says she's deeply concerned after a deal to set up a new authority for the Solent area has been stopped by the government. Hampshire County Council didn't support plans for a new Solent deal backed by Southampton, Portsmouth and Isle of Wight councils. It would have been overseen by an elected mayor and take on services currently managed by central government. Jeremy Corbyn has told ITV Meridian he welcomes suggestions the government may take over the Southern Rail franchise. The Labour leader was in conversation with our political correspondent Phil Hornby.
There are reports in today's papers that the government are considering stepping in, taking the franchise off Southern and running it themselves.
Well, it's about time they stepped in and did something, because they've been funding Southern Rail despite its appalling service and its appalling industrial relations for a very long time.
Would it be better if Chris Grayling ran it?
Well, I hope it won't be Chris Grayling personally running it, but it would then be accountable to Parliament for what it does, and we would obviously be raising issues on it. And I think bringing in Direct Rail to run it straight away would be a very good thing. Bring them in to do it, because this is really not acceptable.
Have you been on the picket line yet?
I've been talking to ASLEF and
you said you were going to stand on the picket line.
No, I haven't.
You said you were happy to.
I said I was happy to. I've been talking to ASLEF, talking to the RMT, talking to TSA, all the unions involved.
How would you standing on a picket line help solve this strike?
Pointing out that those people who are taking action are not going to gain anything from it. What they were doing was taking action because they believed that what was being proposed by Southern Rail would put too many passengers at risk with the loss of staff on the trains itself. Do you think
they're correct when they say that? Because all the officials say it's completely safe.
Listen, on a train there's a lot of people. On a train there are huge responsibilities to the driver. I think it should be quite clear that the train staff are there to support the driver and ensure that there's safe access and leaving of the trains. And I think on-train staff are very important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeremy Corbyn talking to Phil Hornby there. Sussex astronaut Tim Peake today announced he's going back to space. Major Tim from Westbourne clearly wasn't put off by his rather bumpy landing last summer and the sight of burn marks on his capsule, which went on display at the British Science Museum today. Sally Simmons has more.
Major Tim Peake with Soyuz TMA-19M, the craft that took him to space and that he relied on to bring him back. For 6 months, he monitored his lifeline back to Earth from the window of the International Space Station.
Now, naturally, I'm quite fond of this spacecraft. We go back a bit. This thing is our lifeboat for 6 months. It is the only way of getting back to Earth safely.
Scorch marks on the Soyuz, now on display at the British Science Museum, are a clue to the 1,000-degree heat on re-entry and the 17,000-mile-an-hour ride back to Earth. But the bumpy landing hasn't put Major Tim off. He's just announced he's going back. The first British astronaut ever to walk in space captured the imagination of children and adults, and our own Fred Dinage, who luckily would be far too tall to squeeze into Soyuz.
If you think this thing looks a little bit cosy when you have a look through the window, spare a thought for what it's like when you're actually sat in there with about 200 kilograms of extra cargo as well all around you. It's one of the few times I've been grateful that I'm only 5'8".
Tim Peake's parents in Westbourne near Chichester are amazed at the enthusiasm for their son's mission. The whole family want to inspire the next generation to follow their dreams, and today they can see and touch the capsule and feel the reality. Sally Simmons, ITV News.
Let's take a look at the weather now with all the details tonight. Here's Simon.
From sleet to the slopes, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening, and once again I'd say it's chilly enough for a hot water bottle. Temperatures well down into the minuses in many places and a frosty night, but as we head through the next few days things are going to turn just a little less cold. The downside is they're going to become a bit more unsettled, and yes, that does mean rain at times. Low pressure out to the west is going to push various weather fronts our way, so expect a bit of dampness here and there. Expect the winds to pick up too, but like I say, the upside is that at least the temperatures will be going in the right direction. For tonight, it's cold and frosty again. After midnight, we'll see the clouds start to thicken up from the south, bringing with it a few bits and pieces of patchy rain that could turn a bit wintry in places. Temperatures down along the coast and around the Isle of Wight could well stay in the pluses, but elsewhere down into the minuses again. So a cold and cloudy start to tomorrow. In fact, it's going to be a cold and cloudy day. As we head through the day again, we could see a bit of rain just sneaking up from the sea. Nothing too major, just patchy stuff here and there. A lot of us staying dry through daylight hours, and the temperatures creeping up a touch, 7 or 8 year high. Still fairly breezy along the coast with some rain coming from the west tomorrow night.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
And that's it for now.